All right. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the AgRobotics Working Group meeting for October the 11th. I'd like to start off with a list of some new members that we've gained. Paul Olson from the Ontario Battery Services Company Limited, Sarah Lambie from the Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, Vishal Malik from OMAFA, Alfredo Rodriguez from Vantage, Joseph Monroe of General Dynamic, Mike Sproxton, a farmer, Frank Jansen, Complexus Solutions, Ben Scott Robinson from Moss and Guns Limited, as well as not on the list, but we have Allison Earls from OMAFA joining the group as well. I haven't taken a second to see if any of those folks I just named are on the call, but if you are, please, I see Allison is on the call. If you could maybe introduce yourself.
I'm not sure why. Oh, there I am.
There you are.
Perfect. So my name is Allison Earls and I'm from OMAFA, and I work in our business and investment unit. So working with businesses who are investing in Ontario. And so I was kind of connected through a colleague that works in our research and innovation branch, just to learn a little bit more about what you're doing and how maybe our areas of expertise overlap. So great to meet everybody and looking forward to learning a little bit more about what you folks are up to.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I looked through, I don't see any of the other folks I named on the call this morning, but hopefully they'll join in soon. All right, and with that, I'd like to pass it over to Grant from Haggerty AgRobotics, who's going to be telling us a little bit about the seminar that he attended in Germany and AgroIntelli. So Grant, please take it away.
Sure, thanks, Dan. Just try and share my screen here. I think you should be able to see it now.
We can, but it's not in presentation mode.
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right, so yeah, hi everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Grant LG from Haggerty AgRobotics. I'm the agriculture innovation lead and often in charge of the more on the operational side of all our robotics and everything. So last week I had the opportunity to go to Germany. AgRobotics was holding a dealer seminar there. So the venue itself was actually at an old castle that had been converted into a hotel. And it was actually owned by a cooperative of local farmers in the area. So it was a pretty neat venue to attend. So it was in southern Germany, about halfway in between Frankfurt and Munich, in a small town there called Kirchberg an der Jagst. I have no idea if that's a correct pronunciation. My German is non-existent. So, but basically the event itself was gathering dealers of AgRobotics from around the world. So that included ourselves from Canada, a lot of dealers from Europe, so UK, Germany, France, Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, Australia, Czechia and Slovakia, Hungary and Greece, and then also dealer from Australia, and then dealers from Brazil as well. So mostly Europe, but some further away places as well. And basically the event was a few company updates from AgRobotics themselves. But largely it was just for a chance for all the dealers to gather together and share their experiences, both on a sales side, but also on an operations side, kind of what they're doing with the robots, with the roboti, how they're getting them out to customers, some successes, some failures, that kind of thing. So it was just about a 1.5 day event. So we just met in the castle meeting room for the day, had supper, and then the next day we had a short demo with the robot and toured a local factory as well. So going over some updates from AgRoIntelli themselves, largely no groundbreaking updates from them as far as machines or robots go. Most of the updates on their side was fine-tuning their mapping software. The biggest upgrade with that software is an integration of refill points into the navigation. So the idea with that is if you're doing operations where you're applying a product with the robot, such as seeding, spraying, or fertilizing, you can factor in refill points throughout the navigation map for the robot to either pause where it's at, travel to the end of the row, or go to a specific refill point at the field. And that can be done based on if you have enough product for, let's say, 10 acres at a time, you can either customize that refill point to trigger either based on area completed through the navigation map or the number of passes through the field. So it's a very nice feature that'll assist us quite a lot in any of those operations. Before this upgrade, we would have to manually monitor how much the robot is doing and then basically stop it in the middle of the field and either manually move it to the edge of the field to refill or do otherwise. So it was all very manual before, where this is kind of automated that process a lot better. An overview of the dealers there. So there was most of the dealers were kind of like ourselves, where they have multiple robotic systems. Most commonly, it would be Nio, FarmDroid, and Roboti. There was quite a few companies that had all three of those robot systems in their fleet or arsenal, kind of. And often other companies would also deal with other farm equipment, whether it's weeding equipment or other robotic systems, or a couple of them had the AgRobotics sprayer. They were dealers for them as well, but yeah, there was kind of quite a variety of dealers, whereas some this was their first chance seeing the Roboti actually run in the field at the demo that we had later, and others they've had the robot since 2019 when the robot was first offered for sale. So one of the more interesting dealer presentations that we had. So every dealer that was there had to make a presentation on what they were doing with the Roboti, as far as what it was doing in the field, how many robots they had, how they're selling them, any successes or failures that they've had, that kind of thing. So this dealer in the UK is called Autonomous Agri Solutions, and they've probably had the Roboti the longest out of any of the dealers. So they have multiple of the robots, and they are using them as robots as a service. So they're using the robots and selling them to farmers to do custom work in their fields. So doing all sorts of operations: seeding, spraying, fertilizing, weeding, in-row fertilization, basically anything you can think of that a tractor would do, they've done with the Roboti as a custom operation for a farmer. And they're using existing and custom made implements by themselves to get this done. So similar to a little bit of struggle with the Roboti we have here, where we're limited by the frame of the robot itself. They're also limited by the frame as far as the size of the implement goes. So it's often adapting current equipment to fit within that frame of the robot, or just adapting non-existing equipment to do what the farmer wants them to do. So very similar to what we're doing at Haggerty, but the robots as a service would be quite different from what we're doing. But the nice thing about the robots as a service is it allows the the robot to get on the field at a farmer's place without as large of a commitment from the farmer. So I think it's allowed them to grow their operation quite a bit, just getting the robot on the field as much as possible. Another interesting thing they did this past year was they had the chance to run the ag seed robot in parallel with the Roboti. So the idea with that is use the ag seed robot, which is larger, more horsepower, and can allow for a wider implement width. Use that robot for more of the field preparation, the heavy tillage operations, and then follow it up with the Roboti to use for the more high precision operations like seeding or in-row weeding and everything. So that was pretty interesting to see that they could pair those two robots in the same field and get them working in parallel, even though they're from different manufacturers and everything. So yeah, I went over the same they saw some opportunity to pair robot systems together in the future, which I think we're seeing that in Ontario as well. Some of the platforms have strengths and they have weaknesses, just like everything else. So found when Roboti does all the field operations, there's no supervision needed, meaning it's entirely a closed system. So when they took the robot to do every operation from field preparation to planting to weeding and spraying, since the robot is often running on the same path, the same RTK correction signal and everything, it's very, very accurate to where if they're doing it right through to the weeding, they don't need a side shift system for their weeder or anything to compensate for errors in the rows. But when they took the robot to a field that was planted by the farmer or something like that, then they had to constantly supervise the robot. So they had a person in the field monitoring it at all times. Just even though the farmer would often plant with RTK and auto steer and everything, there's always operator errors that show up in the field. Something like small turns coming into the rows before they lower down the planter, or uneven start points when they're planting, that kind of thing. So even though the errors are very limited, they still show up, especially when you're doing a high precision operation like weeding. So they were weeding some lettuce crops where the rows were planted 2-3 inches apart. So the opportunity for error is very small there. So after the event, we had an opportunity to see a Roboti demo in the pouring rain. So I think more than anything, it just showed the robustness of the Roboti being able to operate in any condition you can throw at it. Where some of our electric robots, we'd be scared to have it outside, and that we'd have to either throw a tarp over it or get it back inside so it wouldn't get fully damaged. But that was good to see how it can operate in probably the worst conditions, and definitely the worst conditions that I've ever seen it run in. I wouldn't want a tractor running in that. So, and that's really all I had. There was some more dealers that went over some things at the event. Some of the dealers, similar to us, they maybe have 1 or 2 machines, and they may have a sale for that machine, and they may not. So I think it was a little good to see that we're not as far behind in Canada as Europe as maybe we think we are. So I think going forward, we need to remind ourselves that we're still very early stages in all of this technology, and the whole world is too, right? It's not like Europe is 10 years ahead of us or anything like that. They're just barely ahead of us in some instances. So, and another thing, just driving through the countryside in Germany, the landscape is quite a bit different there in regards to agriculture. A lot of rolling farmland and very, very small fields. I think the average field size that I would guess over there would be around 5 to 10 acres, whereas here it'd be 10 times that. So a little bit different in perspective in how the European companies are often seeing the logistics around the robots, as far as moving them field to field and how much they can do in a day. So that was good to see as well. But yeah, that's kind of all I had for that. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. If not, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Grant. Yeah, were there any questions?
You mentioned the AgRobotics, and I know that you went to the. I didn't know whether Mary Ruth or Kevin were going to talk about the AgRobotics demo, but I know you went to that as well last week, or this week, I mean.
Yeah. So that was up at the Muck Research Station. So that was a very interesting demonstration. I've seen the AgRobotics implement itself at Agritechnica last fall, but I'd never seen it run in the field. So it's very interesting to see. I knew the capability of the implement, so essentially it's about a 20-foot wide spot spraying implement that uses AI to detect where weeds are and where the crop is. So I knew the capabilities of the machine and what it could do, but not necessarily the applicability of it in the field. So there was a lot of farmers at the event there, which was good to see. They're all very interested in the technology, but it's more than just for spot spraying a weed in the field. It can target specific sized weeds in the field and also be used for different products other than herbicide, like fungicides and insecticides, and target the crop as well. So it's good to see, and I think they're having quite a bit of success with that machine in Quebec already, and some of the western states like Washington, Oregon, and California. So I think that machine, I think there's considerable interest around it.
Awesome. Ian, please go ahead.
So, Grant, you mentioned the frame issue, and we kind of identified that last year with that machine too, like a great machine, but is it limited by that frame? Is the company talking about addressing that at all?
A lot of the dealers had that suggestion for them. I think at this point, the frame is variable based on what you order. So you can order a wider robot or a narrower robot if you wish. But that's only to a certain extent, right? It's not like they're going to have a 30-foot wide machine going down the field or anything. So that was raised by a lot of the dealers there as a suggestion to see if they were working on that or thinking about that. And the company is aware of that limitation of the machine, but they're confident that with some modifications it can still work. And we know that with our machine that we have. Even though it struggles to fit some implements, if it were even 6 inches wider, it could fit much more. So the key thing with it is, since it is diesel powered, it can run for a long time at a time without needing to stop for fuel. So I think that's where the strength with this robot is specifically. So,
and the other interesting thing about that sort of footprint is it's sort of a smaller version of the DOT.
yep.
And the question of scale, what is the right scale when it comes to robots and stuff? Something I struggle with myself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Amy, please go ahead.
So Grant, I was wondering if there was any kind of talk about the business model of robots as a service at that meeting in Germany, what people are thinking into the future, whether or not this is going to be a long-term business model, or it's something as we're transitioning through the commercialization of this technology.
I think it can be used for a bit of both. Definitely, I see more potential on the transition to full-scale commercialization. It's similar to renting out a robot, where it's less of a risk for the farmer or the grower to pay that small fee to get a robot working on their farm and see whether it works for them. the only downside I see with it is if you're taking the robot to a farmer's field that's already planted and say he wants to weed with it, there is quite a bit of room for error, trying to adapt the robot to an existing growing system. So I think there is some positives and negatives around it.
Okay, and has anybody thought about biosecurity issues with moving these robots under this model from field to field?
Yeah, so the dealer in the UK, when they were doing this, they did have to wash the machine off every time. As to how well they were washing it off or how concerned the grower was with that stuff, I would assume the customers they were dealing with were quite large operations, so I think they would be concerned with biosecurity. But yeah, they were washing off the machine and everything, moving from customer to customer and everything like that. So
Well, and I think Amy, like starting in 2021, like with the help of Kristen and other members of OMAFA, we developed a protocol when we're moving machines from site to site as well here in Ontario for that same reason, washing the machines off and cleaning them, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Were there any, oh, yes, Valdemiro.
Oh, thank you so much for the great presentation, Grant. I have a question when it comes to farmers adoption. Say, what is the main difference that you are able to basically notice in terms of farmers adoption in Europe and here in Canada? Technology.
I think there is a smaller difference than we think there is in Europe. I think farmers are still hesitant to adopt it on a large scale. But I think similar to what we've been doing the past couple of years, companies are trying to they're finding the same thing that we're finding, that it's a longer cycle to get the farmer to trust the machine. So it's often 2 years that you're spending at the farmer's operation running the robot through the field that they finally start to see its full potential and trust its operation. So I think as far as struggles for adoption, I think they're very similar to what we're seeing here. It's hard to change that mindset of maybe going to a smaller sized machine or just having nobody in the driver's seat, right? So there's still the same struggle with a mindset change in Europe. But yeah, I think we're starting to see that after a couple of years of working through these robots on farm, I think farmers are starting to see the potential and trust the machine a little more. So I think it's just that time spent at farmers' places that is key here. So
Awesome.
hope that answered your question somewhat.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Bridget, yeah, your hand up next.
Yeah, so a similar question to just previous, like with the trust in the machine, is it also like, is it because they're not the ones driving and it's not as big, or is there also like that, I can't fix this if it breaks? Like, is that, if you were to weigh which one is kind of like the most important, like where do you think that if you're up to here or whatever, like the farmers are at?
I don't think, yeah, a lot of the time, like the dealers are operating the machines themselves in the field, especially when it's robot as a service. So I think part of the theory behind that is to basically get the machine working as good as we can versus just throwing it at the farmer and saying, here you go, right? So part of that is building that trust in the machine so the farmer sees that it can work, and then slowly transitioning them to operating the robot themselves. Not that it's a huge learning curve for them to learn how to operate it. It's more showing them that it works good off the bat versus them struggling with it and then saying they don't want it, right? So it's not, I wouldn't say running these robots is any more complicated than running any modern farm equipment or anything. It's just more changing a little bit than what they're used to. So
Yeah.
Ian, you had your hand up next.
So 2 comments. One, to the last thing, like the regular farm equipment is getting so complex now with the computerization and electronics that most of them can't fix it anyway, so they're getting used to that. And then secondly, yesterday I was in Eastern Ontario with Ron Toonders, who's a robotic dairy farmer, and he was one of the first. And he said like the first 2 weeks he slept in the barn because he was so worried that the thing was going to mess up on him. And he's dealing with live animals and stuff, right? And he says when he finished that, he just shook his head at himself and said, I should have trusted it. And I think that trust on those types of systems, that may be where from the field, or from the crop side of things, we need to sort of get robotic dairy farmers out to talk, or at least capture their feelings about how well they trust the robot and stuff, in terms of there's so much comfort out there now. Nobody worries about them. So just a comment.
Yeah. And yeah, as far as scared of being able to fix the machine and everything, I did hear that the one dealer from Australia, we struggle with a 6-hour time difference, but they struggle with I don't even know what the time difference is there, but it's much greater. So often it's the middle of the night for AgRoBotics, and that's when the Australian guy is operating. So the time difference for support is much larger there. But I would say farmers definitely do. That is a concern for them, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be as much as they think it is. Especially with like the Roboti, for example, it's all very traditional what they're used to on their tractors. It's a diesel engine with hydraulics and a PTO, so it's all very similar. It's just a different build form. So maybe on the software side, there definitely is some support that goes into all these machines. But I think that's what we're trying to build with the service center in London. There is trying to monitor everything so it builds that trust with the farmer and just make sure everything goes smoothly for them. So
Awesome. Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd be curious to know, Grant, what you were seeing in Europe and in your experience here in working with robotics as far as the dealership goes. Is it a traditional dealership that you're working with, or is this a new type of dealership? And if it's a traditional dealership, how do you see that the robotic service and support plugging into the existing model?
Yeah, so I would say it was about half and half. Some of the dealers there, they were traditional dealers where they had other farm equipment that they sold, and then robots were in addition to that equipment as more of a value added or new technology kind of thing. And then some of the companies had just solely robotics, and across multiple manufacturers, and then some just had robotics that they were working with, right? So there's quite a variety of what the dealers were working with. I would say a strength of the traditional dealers where they already have farm equipment that they're already selling. They already have that customer base that they talk to. They know the farmers in the area that would be interested, whereas some of the startup companies that are just dealing in robotics, they don't necessarily have that network built out of contacts in the industry. So there can be some struggles there to try and contact or know who to contact and everything. But some of those companies are just doing cold calls for vegetable operations and stuff like that to get those contacts. So I think both the robotics only companies, I think their focus is solely on getting these machines to work in the field, where the dealers, where they have the other equipment, maybe their attention is split between what equipment they're selling. So as to how well they're doing versus each other, I think it's quite equal.
No, and the reason I was asking the question is it's a little bit on what Ian was talking about there about, back in the day when technology in agriculture, like as simple as auto steer came in and they were bolting them onto the tractor, and okay, Steve is going to be our precision ag guy, right? Steve's got no idea what he's doing because everything is new, right? So, and he gets he's inundated with phone calls that he can't answer. So That's part of the reason I was asking the question is how do we support these things?
Yeah, I think the traditional dealers who are starting to get into robotics, yeah, they're the people that were at the event that I was at. They were kind of their robotic specialists for that company,
Right.
so they're very familiar with the machines and everything. So yeah, I think it is important for those more traditional dealers to have specialists on staff who know more in depth about this stuff versus trying to educate everybody about everything, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Chuck, you were next.
Yeah, and Grant already touched on the robotic support hub in London, and the approach for giving the farmers the comfort of somebody watching the robot when they're not there. So that's something that we're very cognizant of. But the other thing that Grant touched on there at the end about the difference between dealers and specialists, um, one of the things that we noticed from my recent talks with Raven. So with precision ag technology, for example, Raven had OEM dealers that would sell precision ag technology, and then they would have independent dealers who only sold precision ag technology. And there's always this question of which is the better model. And across North America, from a precision agriculture technology, the independent Raven dealers sold 10 times as much overall product as the OEM dealers did. So it would take 20 equipment dealers to sell, sorry, it would take 10 equipment dealers to sell the same amount as one dedicated dealer. And I think that's the conundrum that we're facing in the space. And one of the challenges that the dealership model has is trying to allocate an income and a profitability map on every one of their salespeople. And when you're looking at a product that has a 2 to 2.5 year sales cycle, sometimes that's very, very challenging and in the space.
Thanks, Chuck. David, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just to expand a little bit on what Chuck's saying, which is the barriers to adoption. Essentially, it's money, risk, and complexity. And you were talking about the robots as a service model. That sounds, I don't know, intuitively like that is the way to get broad-based adoption in the short term until people are ready to buy, fix, build themselves. And so I don't know if they do this in Europe. I mean, Europe's the land of subsidies. But maybe we should be looking at this in Ontario. Is there an opportunity where perhaps OMAFRA or other organization can subsidize farmers per acre to try a relatively easy, proven technology robot in a field? In other words, let's say it's just cultivating or spraying. And if they're willing to pay a company to come in as a service to use a robot, they get paid X dollars per acre once to try it. So basically maybe you get 50% off your first try of, okay, I'm going to use robots on my field this year for 100 acres. And it's half the cost because the supplier is getting business, the farmer's getting the money to pay the supplier who's giving the service. Everybody's developing their model to maybe be sustainable, and then they can decide if they want to do it the next year. So, it's just a way to, it's kind of like the freemium thing, get people to try it, and then they can risk their own money and maybe do some more service. After they do service for a couple of years, then they're like, I want my own machine now. So,
well, and I think, David, that's an interesting thought. I know that Sabanto down in the U.S. tried that 4 or 5 years ago with very limited success.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is the crop has to be correct. And one of the challenges that we're up against with as a service is that everybody wants her done. As soon as you move into the world of custom work, and if I put my Hagerty Creek hat on, when people call up and they want their fertilizer done, they all want it done on the same day.
Yeah.
And that's always the challenge of doing this. But I don't disagree with what you're suggesting. And what's interesting is the bioenterprise, the OAFRI grant that's coming out here actually will fund rentals, which I thought was when I read that, I had to read it twice and say, really, because that actually is very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it was an angle that I didn't consider up until that. And maybe that is an approach we should be thinking about.
I mean, even if you just did it through us promoting 10 farmers to apply for OAFRI grants, so it's a little more limited instead of, advertising, hey, everybody, you can get money per acre. And then, yes, you're right. You're not going to have enough service providers to come out and in one weekend serve everybody. But I to try this, and exactly what you said, you have the farmer in the barn who goes, wow, I can trust this. And if we get people to see it on their own fields and somebody else takes the responsibility for delivering it, fixing it, executing it, and it's really just about, in the short term, money and I'll see, then that could advance them very quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm going to segue a little bit here because I have to sign off here shortly. But so we're doing a trial on the 24th of some high precision tech from Raven in the orchard business. And actually Raven has done exactly that. They've said, for the farmer, they're just saying, here it is, take it, use it, try it. And if you like it, then you can buy it. And so we're doing this demonstration on the 24th at Suncrest. If there are people that are interested in seeing it, what it is a retrofit kit to a farmer's existing turbo mist sprayer or orchard sprayer to add precision mapping and rate control on these machines. And so if people are interested, we'll be running that from 10 o'clock in the morning until 1. If you do register or let me know who's coming, lunch will be provided. And I think just send me a note if you're interested in coming. Again, that'll be at Suncrest Orchards. Okay, so I'll put that plug out there. But again, that is the idea that Raven is saying, hey, we want farmers to see this and try it, kind of in a risk-free way. So that's what they did. And Hayden had been asking about it before, and he was a little reluctant to spend the money initially. And so we said, hey, they have this program out. Let's do this and we'll try it. And it's exactly that's a good way to do it.
Awesome. Thanks for the info on that, Chuck. Grant, again, thank you so much for your presentation and your update. Everybody, thank you for all your questions. Some good discussions happening there. If you have any more questions afterwards, you can always reach out to me or Bridget or directly to Grant, and we can hopefully get you some of those answers you might be looking for. I'll move us into the conferences, meetings, tours, demo section. Last week, we were at the International Plowing Match and Rural Expo in Lindsay. I was there covering the booth for a couple of days. We had some great weather. It was a great turnout. Lots of good conversations happening there. I'm not sure if anybody else attended or has any thoughts or comments on their experiences at the plowing match.
I did not attend, but I know Kate, my daughter Kate, was there on the Saturday, and she said it was well attended. She took the one robot out for a walk a few times, and people enjoyed that. The deputy minister stopped by and commented that he was happy to see that we were there supporting the innovation in the province.
Awesome. Yeah, we all were taking the Oz out for a walk around the grounds, and that was good. I got people's heads turning and got them asking some questions. So yeah, that was definitely very valuable that we were able to do that. Um, uh, Already mentioned was on October the 8th, there was the AgRobotics ARA Precision Sprayer demo. Did anybody else have any comments or thoughts on that or how it went? No? All right, very good. Chuck already
Oh
touched.
no, Mary Ruth just turned her camera on, so I'm sure she's always
All
got
I-
something informative to say.
There she is.
All I was going to say is that I thought Grant covered it very well. We were happy with the turnout, and AgRobotics was very pleased with the way it all worked out.
I think
Excellent.
for anybody who is in the segment of reducing spraying in vegetable crops, nothing gets a farmer more excited than a new sprayer. And at the end of the day, if you talk about spraying, that's we've got so much history with that, and farmers are definitely interested in the technology. That's for sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the next day we went back and we actually did spray with the unit. We tried with a few different buffer zones, so we'll see how that turns out. And yeah, the growers seemed really excited. We only had 7 register, but then we had 50 people show up, and most of them were growers. And I believe the demo unit has already been sold, and there's maybe a few more who are looking to buy one too. So yeah, really positive reception from the growers.
Awesome. That's excellent to hear. Thanks for that, Jeff. Speaking of sprayers, Chuck already went over some of the details for the demo day on October the 24th. So if you are interested in that, you can reach out to myself or to Chuck to sign up for that. Lunch provided, so hey, free lunch. We also have upcoming in November the Kane networking reception on the 6th, followed by the Agriculture Enlightened on November the 7th. Also on November the 7th, so that's in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and then also on the 7th in Puslinch, Ontario. Not sure if that's how to pronounce it. But the Ontario Pest Management Conference will be taking place. I know that Kristen Obeid will be speaking there. Kristen, I don't know if you have any details on that you want to share, or
Well, it's going to be a really great conference. So it's at the Victoria Park East Golf Course in Guelph. It's there usually every year, November the 7th. Starts at 9 a.m. We do have a speaker from Germany coming, talking about using AI for insect control. So that's going to be really interesting. We also have Amy Hurt coming from Montana, who uses dogs for scouting, and is going to be talking about for different pests and diseases and things like that. And then I'm giving a talk on using AI automation and robotics for weed control. Another part of my presentation will include using AI for herbicide discovery and new mode of action. So it should be those are the 3 plenary speakers, but we also have industry talks as well as a lot of I think there's 9 graduate student talks on all new technologies and integrated pest management. So if you have an opportunity, you can visit the Ontario Pest Management Conference website and sign up and register. So hope to see some of you there.
awesome. Thanks for the info, Kristen.
Yeah. I'll put a link in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. The link is also on the agenda, and it will be until the event happens. No new project updates for this week. Funding announcements, opportunities. There's a lot in there. None new that have been added for this week though. But definitely check those out. At this point, I'll open up the meeting to the round table. Taylor, I saw you threw your hand up there.
Thanks. Let me take it down. Yeah, actually, I just came back from the Canadian Greenhouse Conference yesterday. I was only there for the second day, but it was a really good show, really good showing. I was talking a lot about the AgRobotic working group, so trying to get some folks headed our way, definitely, and got to connect with folks from Vineland, the Greenhouse Technology Network. I found is a good complement to this as well. So a lot of all of the universities and colleges were there, so that was really great. And also just seeing the amount of technology, how familiar, drones, obviously very different, but depending on its indoor or outdoor or whatnot. But it was my first time at this show, and if anyone else was on the call was at the Canadian Greenhouse Conference, I'm interested in what you thought of it. There were really good speakers, and for one day, it was extremely productive. So I can only imagine if anyone was there for the full thing. They had a bus tour down to Leamington, so pretty good showing in Niagara overall.
Awesome, thanks, Taylor. Did anybody else have any thoughts regarding what Taylor spoke to, or anything new, questions, queries, opinions? No? All right. Oh.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I was there for the Greenhouse Conference, and I've been thinking about this too, about the crossover between field crops and greenhouse. And some of the presentations I saw were about tomato harvesting and strawberry harvesting. Just, using cameras to identify the fruit before it's picked. And, I think there's some similarities to the orchards with the one robot demo day in Simcoe, where they had the tractor mounted camera that was analyzing the number of apples and the size classes of apples, and predicted yield at the end of the season. So yeah, I mean, it's two different worlds to me, but I think there's technologies that cross over into both, and just something to think about, I guess.
Awesome, thanks. Ian, you got your hand up.
I just wanted to tell you about a conversation I had with a farmer. His name is Scott Swain. He's from Blackstock, small or medium scale feedlot, and then cash cropping. But he and two other farmers have a custom spray business, and sort of east of 400, they often do their own thing because the availability of that type of equipment is not as proficient as in the West. And he said to me, with the two sprayers, they try and flip them every two to 4 years, just because of the hours they put on with all the acres they cover. And with the price change in equipment, especially on the sprayers and that, he said to me, and I didn't know how to answer him, he said, should we be trading in one of the sprayers and looking at replacing that with a couple of drones for our custom spray operation? And so I didn't know how to answer him at this time when we don't have a pesticide registered for that type of application at the current time, but also in terms of, the ROI and stuff like that. But the reason I say this to you is that it was intriguing that somebody that's really not connected with the robotic space at all is starting to ask those questions. And so I find that very intriguing and valuable for us to know.
I'll add one more thing, because Ian mentioned drones. So I had a good, interesting conversation with one of the at one of the booths about a company that sprays coatings on the top of greenhouses using drones, and this is to sort of, I guess, reduce light intensity. And I found it really interesting. I guess this is really a big thing in the US, and it's not a permanent coating because they go back in at the end of the season and wash it off. But it seems like they can't keep up with it. And now that they've, are using drones for this type of spray application, they're finding other niches that they can move into so that they're not just an ag company, but they're, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like they're looking at like defense contracts for the US and using drones to do these types of applications for different types of infrastructure. The other one that they are looking at is spraying solar panels on solar farms. So, I guess the claim is that some of those solar panels will clean themselves, but like they're making the case that, well, they do need to be cleaned because your solar panels aren't operating efficiently if they're not clean. So they're getting a lot of business, but it just struck me that it started out as one thing and they're trying to help greenhouses and they're successful at that, but now they're finding all these other uses, and it doesn't seem like there's enough drone operators in the States to keep up with the demand for these things.
Interesting. Valdemiro?
Oh, yes, thank you. Actually, I have a question and perhaps just asking for an advice from one of you experts. So I've been working on a AI model to basically perform soil sampling. Say farmers, they usually do soil sample by sending the sample to the lab and do the test. So I've been working on a different approach, which I worked on my thesis, which like I'm trying to do that by simply measure like the resistivity of soil and then like input that data into an AI model, and I would be able to give farmers that advice on like the type of soil and fertilize to apply and so on. But for that to make my model better, I need to collaborate with soil labs. But I struggle to actually find that collaboration. I've been sending email, but like it's very hard. So my question is, if any of you guys were somehow like doing a similar task, how do you approach to have this collaboration with the labs itself?
Might have to pay them.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. You just pay for the soil tests.
Okay.
Why would they collaborate if you're going to put them out of business?
That's actually also a very valid point that I've been thinking. Perhaps that's the hesitation also. But yeah, thanks also for that input.
So I'll just extend that thought there. And this is just for curiosity. Is there anybody on this call that wants their microbiome of their soil assessed? We all know there's physical soil testing, but and most people understand the microbiome is important. Is there anybody here who's saying, you know what, I want to know what my microbiome is in my 200 acres? Maybe
I definitely send a note to Chuck.
Right. But we're doing a lot of work on soil microbiome in different situations, but it's very complex to say we're going to assess the microbiome of your 200-acre field. I'm not quite
that's
sure
part of my point.
Give you.
Yeah, like people talk about it. People who are on the leading edge are talking about it. I'm just interested in knowing if there's anybody actually thinking, I want to be an early adopter. I'd pay for that, like I pay for a soil test, because you don't really know what information it's going to give you and how you're going to use the information. But definitely that is going to be the next, maybe in 10 years, the next level of precision ag.
Right. Well, A&L Labs does a soil health test that
Who's that?
includes A&L Labs in London called Vitalis. And they look at physical characteristics, but they look at a number of different aspects of the microbiome. I had a grad student who was looking at that in terms of soil health, but it's still very difficult to say whether the indices that they're coming up with really relate to soil health and what it's actually telling you.
Yeah, that's great information. Thank you.
David, I think Carrie Dunfield is doing a lot of work in that area.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, we've been talking with Carrie, and
Okay.
and that's exactly the issue is when are end users gonna want this information? Because we're probably still too early right now, because nobody really understands how to quantify it properly, and nobody really understands, if I do quantify it, what do I do to move the needle? Because you got to have a solution to implement if I want to have actionable information. You know, you tell me what it is, but I can't change it. It's like, well, what good does that do me? So anyway, no, this is great information.
We are at 10 o'clock here, but Matt, if you just have something quick there you want to add in. Oh, Matt, I think you're frozen. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I was just going to say that this winter I'm getting traded on an Oxford nanopore so I can do that microbiome testing. So for the question of who is an end user that's interested, I am. I don't think we're the prototypical end user, but someone is. I am.
Yay, we got one.
That's it. Thanks.
Excellent. No problem. Thanks, Matt. All right. Check out the list of articles that we have there. We added a new video from the it's a short, quick video from the Canada's Outdoor Farm Show. Thank you everybody so much for your discussion today and for joining in the meeting. Everybody have a great long Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll see you all on the call next Friday. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.